Hey, it's Marley, and it's time to do my spring-summer book haul. So twice a year, I like to do a book haul. They're kind of seasonal. I do fall, winter, and then spring, summer, where I just talk about all the books that I accumulated during those months. Some of these books I will have read already, and you'll see me talk about them, and some of them I will not have read. So the books I'm talking about today, there's 28 of them, I believe, that I acquired in the spring and summer, but I'm gonna put up a stat of my books acquired for the whole year. So basically my total for the year as it stands right now is that I've acquired 41 books. The amount that I've spent on books is $520.75, which is definitely more than last year. I'm pretty sure I spent like a total of 300 or something last year, so we're spending more. And the percentage that I've read is 54%, which I feel is not, it's not the worst, not the best. Obviously, it's like very average at like 50%. So that being said, let's go into the book haul, and I'm gonna talk about these books in the order that I got them. I do keep track of that. Let's get into it. First of all, we have The Only Survivors by Miranda. This is a thriller book that I actually read recently, but I got it in the spring because my friend annotated it for me. It was actually for our Christmas gift to each other, where we annotate a book for each other, but she didn't get it to me until March, I guess, because she wrote that she started it in January and didn't finish it till March. And I just read it recently. So this is about a group of people who survived this tragic accident together. They really bond because of that experience. And when one of their survivors passes away, they decide to start getting together every year to check in on each other, their mental health, stuff like that, and just be supportive. Then another one of them dies. And so kind of more of a mystery starts of like, why do they keep seeming to get picked off one by one? I enjoyed this overall. I think I only give it a 3-star though, because I am trying to be a little bit more harsh in my ratings. I feel like I would give out 4 stars constantly as kind of like the automatic rating I would give things if I didn't hate it, but I'm trying to be a little more harsh. I'm trying to give out more 3 stars if they were just kind of like average. I liked them, but nothing special, and saving my 4-star ratings for if I really, really liked it, and then obviously 5-star for loving it. So yeah, not the best thriller in my opinion, but it still was a fun time. And as I said, and I think my last video, my wrap up, I would read more from Miranda. Next up is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This came out earlier this year and I read it immediately, and I even did a spoiler-filled reading blog for it. So if you want to check that out, go ahead, I'll have it linked below. Holly Jackson is like my favorite young adult mystery thriller author. I love her. I actually went to an author event when she came to Toronto for this book as well, so that was really cool. I gave it 5 stars. It's gonna be one of my favorite books of the year. Highly recommend. But it is about this girl whose mom vanished when she was a kid, and then it's years later. She is, I think, 18 years old, and her mom reappears. Her mom is Rachel Price. So this mystery is unraveling of where has Rachel Price been all these years, and why is she disappearing now? All right, a book I have not got to yet is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the sequel to Ninth House. I think I read this last year. I keep forgetting when I read it, but I absolutely loved it when I read it, Ninth House. So once the paperback came out for Hellbent, I bought it because I have the paperback of Ninth House. I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. I just need to find the time. It just needs to come up in one of my like TBR game prompts. A great time would be to read it in October, actually, in the fall. So maybe I'll try and fit that in. But yeah, this is like a adult fantasy, dark academia book in the first one, because they're at like a school setting. I don't believe this second one is in a school setting, but I'm really excited to dive back into this world and with these characters. I really enjoyed both of those aspects from the first book. Another book I haven't read yet is The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is the sequel to, what was the other one called? The Stolen Heir. So it is the final book in the Stolen Heir duology, which of course is the sequel series to the Cruel Prince series. Apparently she's gonna have even more books continuing in this series. I know a friend of mine just recently read this and she said it does end off with like the potential for more books. I am looking forward to reading this. I'm not necessarily like racing to read it. The first book, Stolen Heir, was 4 stars for me, but I do just really love Holly Black's writing, and I love reading about her fairy world. Like, I really love reading about fairies. This is about fairies and that's all I'll say about it, but I feel like it's a really pretty cover. I just love all the covers and the aesthetics for these books. Speaking of fairies, we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. I already read this and I really enjoyed it. As I was just alluding to, I love reading about fairy lore, and this is very authentic to like the original fairy mythology and such. It's not something like Sarah J Maas's version of Faeries where she really just goes off and it's very different from traditional fairy lore. So I really like that. It is about Emily Wilde, obviously our main character. This is kind of like her journal where she's writing about her research that she finds when investigating these fairies in Sweden, I believe. I could see this not working for everyone, but it definitely did work for me. I really love Emily. I like her relationship with what's his face, Bamblebee or whatever, and I just really like the world. So I plan on buying the second one soon. I know people say the second one isn't as good, which is kind of sad, but I still overall liked this, and I liked buying the hardcover of this and how there's no dust jacket, it's just printed on. So that's why I like this edition. Of course, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is a romance book I read earlier this year and really, really loved. Definitely a favorite romance, as Emily is one of my favorite romance authors. Of course, this is about Daphne. Ooh, when I can remember the character's name, that's a good sign. Daphne? I forget the guy. Miles. Anyways, we have some fun tropes in here where Daphne and Miles end up living together and kind of fake dating when their exes get together and kind of betray them. And then it's like a very nice roommates or friends to lovers story. Emily just always has so many aspects to her romances that I really, really love. I just really connect with her. I think you either do or you don't. So yeah, highly recommend this as always. Ooh, a book I am excited about is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This is on my immediate TBR. Little spoiler alert for October. Why would I want to read it in October? Can you guess? Yeah, obviously giving super witchy, Halloween-y, spooky vibes. So I'm so excited. Rachel Harrison is a horror author, but I think she does cozy horror, which I haven't really, have I checked out cozy horror yet? I feel like I haven't, but I feel like that's so up my alley. I've heard so many good things about Rachel Harrison's books on BookTube from people I feel like I trust. So really excited for this, and I think this is about a witch. Okay, we got a nice cozy small town, and then the main character Annie meets Sophie, who's a very charming woman, and they become friends, even though the whole town seems afraid of this woman. Like maybe because her appearance is uncanny and ageless, her mansion in the middle of the woods feels a little unearthly, and she does seem to wield a certain power. But she couldn't be, could she? A witch? Anyway, excited for that. It's almost October, so excited. All right, another Holly Black book. We have Book of Night, and I actually got a signed edition. I didn't even know it was a signed edition when I got it, but that's fine, because I probably would consider Holly a favorite author of mine, but this was her adult fantasy debut. A lot of people hated it, but I ended up reading it for my reading blog where I read my favorite booktubers' favorite books, because Sarah without an H really loved this book last year, so that's why I read it, and I'm glad because I also really liked it. I think I gave it a 4-star. It wasn't perfect, but I really, really liked the main character, and even though there were flaws with the world, sometimes it was a little bit confusing, so overall really enjoyed it and would recommend it. Then, so one of my goals for the year is to purchase more books that I have already read and don't own that are favorites or 5 stars. I am the type to display like every book that I've read and that I own, but I kind of want to be one of those people who has a bookshelf that really reflects their favorites and truly reflects their taste. So I'm slowly trying to buy books that I just got from the library or whatever and I don't own. So I did get Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogle. She is one of my favorite romance authors, so I would love to buy all of her books. This is like her Christmassy magical one that I really, really recommend reading around Christmas. It's about a girl who is kind of like the Scrooge of the story. She's kind of hateful, I think, at the beginning, and then she makes a wish and this little Christmas spirit appears. What was his name? Hal, the holiday spirit. Yeah, it's a really cute, beautiful, magical, silly story. She has very silly writing, but yeah, I'm glad that now I own this. Going with that same trend of buying favorites, I did buy A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This was a 5-star read for me when I read it. It's like a horror romance book about Dracula. I'm sure you've heard about it. Or not about Dracula, sorry, but about his wives. And like one of his wives, his first one is like writing to him, deals with kind of like domestic abuse and different themes like that. But the writing was just so beautiful. So I decided to buy this, and I think a sequel is out. A sequel is out for this, so I need to get on that. And another one of my favorites that I ended up purchasing post reading it is Abby Jimenez, yours truly. Abby is one of my favorite romance authors. I mean, she's a favorite for so many, like I'm not unique in this, but she writes some of the best romances out there right now, and yours truly was my favorite from her. This was 5 stars. So I decided to buy this, and I feel like if I can get the budget or if I can find them maybe discounted, I would buy the rest of hers, but at least I have this one, which was my favorite. Oh, maybe I should say what it's about. So this is about 2 doctors who get off on the wrong foot but end up bonding over like writing letters to each other, if you like that kind of meet cute situation. They end up fake dating as well because they're both helping each other out with different like family issues they have going on. It has so many tropes, and it was just emotional and funny and just the whole package. Okay, back to a book I haven't read. We have One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. So I own all of Ruth Ware's books. They are somewhere behind me there on the shelf. I kind of regret that. I'm the type of person who like, I try to own all of an author's books if I am like collecting them kind of thing. And I've been doing that with Ruth, but all of her books are like quite mid for me. I've been hearing not great things about this book. Like, ugh. Her last book she put out, 0 Days, her release from last year, like I really didn't like. I think I maybe gave it 3 stars, but you know, I'm in my harsher rating era, so maybe I would have rated it lower, but it just wasn't giving mystery or thriller. It was just like survival action, like our main character was on the run. What I've been hearing about this is the same thing, that it's not necessarily like a mystery that you're unraveling. It's more just like the characters are trying to survive on this island. And so I'm like, that does not seem as interesting as like a thriller mystery, but I'm pretty sure it's about this couple who goes on this reality TV competition, and then, as I just said, they have to like end up surviving the elements or something. I like the premise of it being a reality TV show setting, but we'll have to see whenever I get to it if she actually does a good job with it or not. Also, it's like pretty long. It looks long anyways, so yeah, nearly 400 pages. Why? All right, kind of a random book that I got was War Storm by Victoria Ayevard. This is a young adult fantasy book. It is the 4th book, I want to say, in the Red Queen series. So last year, or was it this year? Actually, I think it was earlier this year, I read Red Queen, the 1st book in this series, and I realized that I owned the 2nd and 3rd book, but I didn't own this book, which is the 4th one. So I just got it because I saw it at a used bookstore. This is, as I said, young adult fantasy / like dystopian. Our main character, I actually don't want to explain it, but apparently that book that's popular recently, Powerless, is like totally copying this series, and it's basically like plagiarism because it's like the exact same plot. So if you've heard about Powerless recently, just know it's like the exact same as this series. All right, another random one that I got from like the very discounted bin at this one bookstore, it was $2, is Late Bloomers, The Power of Patience in a World Obsessed with Early Achievement by Karlgaard. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, as you may well know, but this just kind of interests me. I feel like I was a late bloomer in certain ways, maybe not in every way, but I just think this could be interesting to read. Again, it was only $2. I'm trying to increase the nonfictions I read because I think the ones I have read have been very interesting, very enlightening. So yeah, I'll let you know when I read that. Okay, back to some books that I already read but wanted to buy is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I definitely would reread this one because I think I read this like in my first year of doing booktube. It was one of the first like adult romances I ever read, and I know I really loved it. So I wouldn't mind rereading it to see if it holds up, but this is of course an iconic romance online. It's about these 2 characters who hate each other, but they end up having to pretend to be newlyweds when they go on this honeymoon trip. Just like a staple if you want enemies to lovers, fake dating combined. Like, it was great from what I remember. So now I finally have it in my collection. Another one I finally have in my collection is The Silent Patient by Michaelides. This was an easy 5 star. Unfortunately, his newest book was not, but similar to Unhoneymooners, I think this was one of the first books I read when I started booktube and one of the first thrillers I read. So again, I don't know how it would be if I would have read it, you know, for the first time today, being more of a seasoned reader, but I really loved this one back then. It was about this guy who's like a psychologist or something, and he takes on this case and this woman who killed her husband and then never spoke again. She never like defended herself or anything. That's why she's the silent patient. And so he is trying to get to the bottom of like, why is she not talking? What's going on? Why did she kill her husband? Really great mystery if you don't guess the twist. If you do guess it, I see why you wouldn't be impressed, but if you don't guess it, when it unravels, It's like mind-blowing. All right, now a more non-mind-blowing book. We have Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. He's one of my favorite authors, and this was his newest release. Unfortunately, I was disappointed in it. That being said, I still gave it, I think, 3.5 stars, but it just didn't hold up for me compared to some of his other books. But it is about this main character whose best friend was murdered or like went missing when he was younger, and he's always been like very traumatized by this. And when he comes back to his hometown and his like childhood home, he feels like this presence of his old best friend. Like, is he still around? Is he a ghost, or like what happened? So this guy is trying to figure out kind of what happened to his friend all those years ago. We're getting flashbacks and we're getting points of view of like the other characters in this neighborhood. It's very focused on like this street that he lived on and the neighbors that he had there. It just didn't go far enough for me. It didn't go twisty enough, wasn't shocking enough, but I've seen a lot of people liking it, so maybe you still want to check it out. Another book I recently read and talked about in my last video, we have Attached at the Hip by Christina Riccio. She is the booktuber Poland Bananas Books, if you ever watched her growing up. But this is her third book, and I believe it is her best. It is a rom-com, which is her typical genre. We have a main character who goes on this spin-off version of Survivor that is more of like a dating version of the game, and she gets attached at the hip with her old crush from high school, and they are competing together, and you see her building relationships with all the other players, creating other romantic connections and friendship connections. This had a lot of, you know, cringy moments. A lot of the humor didn't always work for me, so I could see a lot of people not loving that, but so many things did work for me. The romance, the friendships, all the relationships were really well done. The reality game show aspects were really well done. The challenges felt super real. If you watch Survivor or any of the reality competition shows out there, you'll definitely get a kick out of this. And one of the flaws, or one of the issues I had with her last book, is that it was like too long, and it went on too long and it dragged out, and I don't think that was an issue here. I feel like the pacing was definitely better. So yeah, 4 stars for this, and it was a good time. All right, then we have The First to Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is the sequel to They Both Die at the End, a young adult contemporary kind of dystopian-ish book, I guess, kind of sci-fi. Obviously, They Both Die at the End was a really popular book quite a few years ago now, like at least 5 or more years ago. I read it during that time. It was pretty decent. I've read all of Adam Silvera's books, all of his contemporaries. I DNF'd his fantasy series. I forget the name of it, but it was just not good. He's better as like a contemporary writer than a fantasy writer, in my opinion. But yeah, since I have the first book, I was like, I'll buy the second book and I'll check it out whenever I can. It's a little bit thick, honestly, so I don't love that. But this takes place in a world in the future where there's this technology that notifies you when you're gonna die. So you know throughout the whole day that you're gonna die. So in the first book, these 2 boys both, I think, get the message, and then throughout the day, they're like bonding and falling in love and stuff. It's been a while since I read it, so sorry if I don't remember all of it. This is, I think, the prequel when this technology first enters society. Oh yeah, it's called Deathcast, which predicts when people die. It looks like it's following 2 boys again, so maybe another kind of romance moment. And it looks like he's creating a whole ass series for this. Look for the next book. No one knows who dies at the end. Like, what's that one gonna be now? All right, a cute little book I have here is The Iron Sword by Julie, I would say Kagawa, maybe? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But this is the next book in the Iron Fae Even Fall series. If you didn't hear me talk about this, there's the Iron Fae series that I read during high school. It's like a young adult fairy fantasy series. And she had some more books and like a little prequel moment. And now she has even more books in another prequel moment coming out. These are following one of the characters from the original series called Puck, or Robin Goodfellow. If you really are into like the traditional fairy mythology and lore, I would recommend this series overall. But when I read the first book in this new series, what was that one called? It's right over here. The Iron Raven. I enjoyed it for nostalgia's sake, but I was like, okay, like what's the point? Like, we have our same characters doing the same kind of stuff, doing quests, fighting monsters, like we've seen it before. So I got it because I'm a collector, as I said before, but I mean, I'm not super happy that I have to keep purchasing these books in this series. Anyways, Oh, this is exciting. So I recently went to British Columbia, and at this one bookstore in the town I went to, I found Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. Remember Rachel Harrison from earlier in the video with Cackle? So she has a few books out. When I saw this, I was like, oh, I gotta get that. Like, I'm assuming I'm really gonna enjoy her as an author. So now I guess we're collecting her books. This is another horror, as I said, I guess cozy horror. A young woman in need of a transformation finds herself in touch with the animal inside in this gripping, incisive novel from the author of Cackle and the Return. So I think it's about a woman turning into a werewolf. Maybe I'll fit this in October as well. I have so many books I would love to read in October. I was super excited about these next two books. I went to Mosaic Books when I was in BC, in Kelowna. You might recognize that name because Kayla from Books and Lala, she's obviously a very awesome, popular booktuber here on the platform. She lives there and she goes to this bookstore. So I was really excited to go there, and I ended up getting two books that I have been trying to find for years. We have Cress by Marissa Meyer and Winter by Marissa Meyer. So this is the third and fourth book in the Lunar Chronicles series. I hope I can get these stickers off actually. Okay, I won't do it now, but okay, yeah, they're coming off well. Perfect. When I first bought into the Lunar Chronicles books, so the first book, Cinder, I bought it like years ago when it had this original cover. Since then, they've come out with new covers, and to keep the same editions as the first and second book, I was looking for the third and fourth with this original cover and I could not find it. But here at Mosaic Books, they had the original covers. So now I have the whole quartet with these original covers that I really like. So now I can finally continue the series, because I started this series a couple years ago and I haven't continued because I wanted to buy these versions and read these versions. So finally I have them, and they are like a sci-fi-ish series, sci-fi fantasy, and they're also fairy tale retellings, as you can kind of imagine from the covers. So the first one's about Cinderella, who is a cyborg. The second one follows Red Riding Hood. This one's gonna be Rapunzel, and this one's gonna be Snow White, I guess. I need to get reacquainted into this world again, but yeah, I'm excited to finally continue with these as they are pretty popular. And this last section of books I bought all at once recently. They're all pretty new releases that I have not read yet. So we have a novel, Love Story by Ashley Poston. I actually found this at a used bookstore for $10, even though it's pretty new, so I loved that. I don't buy a lot of romance books, but as I said earlier, I'm trying to buy more of my favorites, and I absolutely love The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston that I read earlier this year. So I'm just kind of assuming this will be another 5-star or a book I really like. So it's about a main character who I think is like obsessed with fictional men. So she's, a big book lover, so love that. She ends up somehow getting teleported into a fictional world, I guess maybe from one of her favorite books. And so then she has a cute little romance story within one of her favorite romance books. Like, that sounds like everyone's dream. So we'll see how this one goes. I feel like I've been hearing good things though. Oh wow, we have more stickers. Let me take this off because that's ugly. So Casey McQuiston's new book came out, and I think this must be the Indigo exclusive edition because it has like the sprayed edges that say some things taste better together. But yeah, it's called The Pairing. This is I think sapphic romance. The genders of the characters are up for debate, but these two characters I think are exes, and then they end up having to go on this European trip together that they had planned years ago and maybe is gonna like expire or something. So then yeah, they're just kind of like falling back in love during this trip across Europe, which sounds super fun. I feel like it's super late. Like, this would be such a good book to have read in the summer, and now I feel like it's getting a little bit late, so maybe I'll read it next summer, I don't know, but very cute. All right, another book we gotta take the sticker off of is Rainbow Rowell's new book, Slow Dance. I'm so excited for this one because I was such a Rainbow Rowell fan when I was younger. Like, Fangirl's one of my favorite books of all time, and I feel like it really holds up too. So I'm glad she's finally returning to writing because I think it's been a minute since we had something from her, and I've already been seeing good things about this book. But I think that is it a best friends to lovers? Yeah, so these two friends, and then they reconnect years after they lost touch at this wedding. And it seems like we have a bit of like older characters as well. Like, our main character has been married and divorced and has kids, so that's kind of cool. Then Sherry Lapina came out with a new book. We know I love Sherry. What Have You Done is her latest thriller. So not all of her books hit completely for me. I do read them all in one day because they're so addicting, but sometimes the actual like reveals are not always my favorite and sometimes they are. So I'm curious to see how this one will go. Let me guess. The description is going to be super generic. Nothing ever happens in sleepy little Fairville, Vermont. Sorry, I haven't read this yet, the synopsis. So, the teenagers get their kicks telling ghost stories in the old graveyard. The parents trust their kids will arrive home safe from school. Everyone knows everyone, curtains rarely twitch, front doors are left unlocked. Typical Sherry Lapina domestic neighborhood thriller. Okay, but this morning all of that will change because Diana Brewer isn't lying safely in her bed where she belongs. Instead, she lies in a hayfield circled by vultures discovered by a local farmer. How quickly a girl becomes a ghost. How quickly a town of friendly, familiar faces becomes a town of suspects, a place of fear and paranoia. Someone in Fairville did this, everyone wants answers, and one innocent question could be deadly. So very typical Sherry Lapina. Stay tuned for my review. The final book I am going to haul today is Such Charming Liars by Karen M. McManus. This is a young adult mystery thriller. She is, of course, the author of One of Us is Lying and that whole series, and a number of other young adult thrillers, which I do collect. She's one of the authors that I collect her books. I kind of regret that a little bit just because I feel like her books are a little bit mid. They're not as good as, say, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Holly Jackson's books, for example. But we'll see what she brings in this one. I don't know if I've read the synopsis for this one either yet, so bear with me here. For all of Kat's life, it's just been her and her mother, Jamie, except for the 48 hours when Jamie was married and Kat had a stepbrother, Liam. That all ended in an epic divorce, and Kat and Liam haven't spoken since. Now Jamie is a jewel thief trying to go straight, but she has one last job at billionaire Ross Sutherland's birthday party, and Kat has figured out a way to tag along. What Kat doesn't know, though, is that there are two surprise guests at the dazzling Sutherland compound that weekend. The last two people she wants to run into, Liam and his father, a serial scammer who has his sights set on Ross Sutherland's youngest daughter. Kat and Liam are on a collision course to disaster, and when Sutherland dies, they realize they might actually be in the killer's crosshairs themselves. Somehow Kat and Liam are the new targets and they can't trust anyone except each other. Or can they? Because if there's one thing both Kat and Liam know, it's how to lie. Okay, I will say, this sounds a little bit different from her typical thriller that takes place at a high school. Like, she's diving into some heist stuff with these, like, scammer criminals. I guess we just have two main characters. It looks like they both maybe get a point of view. I assume that will also be a little romance. I'll let you know what I think of this when I read it. I don't know if it's going to be top priority, but I'm actually intrigued that it sounds a little bit different from her typical formula. So that is my long, big book haul. Please let me know if you have any thoughts below, if there's any books you think I should prioritize of the books I didn't read, and obviously stay tuned and subscribe to see my review of all of these books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your summer, what little we have left, and I'll see you next time in a brand new video. Bye!